She walked into the bank like any other customer, confident, composed, carrying nothing but the weight of her own success. But within minutes, that confidence would be tested in a way no one should ever face. A simple request to withdraw her own money spiraled into suspicion, resistance, and humiliation. Why? Because of the color of her skin. The bank thought they knew who she was, but they had no idea. What they didn't realize was that the woman they tried to deny actually owned the very bank they worked for. She wasn't just another customer walking into that bank. She was a woman who had built her success brick by brick. As the CEO of a thriving company, her days were filled with board meetings, late-night strategy calls, and the constant pressure of proving herself in a world that often underestimated her. Yet despite the weight she carried, she had carved out her place at the very top. People admired her confidence, her elegance, and her ability to command respect in every room she entered. To her, visiting the bank was routine, just another errand between back-to-back meetings. She wasn't expecting anything unusual. In fact, she barely had time to think about it, her mind already racing toward the projects waiting on her desk. The bank was supposed to be neutral ground, a place where numbers spoke louder than faces, where professionalism overpowered prejudice. But on this day, something felt different. A quiet tension hung in the air, almost invisible, almost ignorable, until it wasn't. She had no idea that this seemingly ordinary visit would force her to confront something deeper than business, something that would expose how even power and wealth couldn't always shield her from the harsh reality of racism. She stepped up to the counter, her paperwork neatly in hand, the kind of preparation that had carried her through years of business. The teller smiled stiffly, glanced at the withdrawal request, and then hesitated, longer than necessary. A pause that felt heavy, deliberate. Instead of processing the transaction, the teller's eyes flickered with something else. Doubt, suspicion, the kind of look that told her she wasn't being seen as a CEO, but as a stranger who didn't belong. The questions began. Innocent at first, then sharper, cutting. Why such a large amount? What's the purpose of this withdrawal? Are you sure this is your account? Her heart pounded, not from guilt, but from disbelief. She had answered these questions before in other banks, other places, but there was something different this time. The tone, the insinuation, the quiet judgment hiding behind polite smiles. Minutes passed, and still her request wasn't honored. Instead, the teller disappeared into the back office. She waited, clutching her purse tighter, every second stretching, like an hour. People in line began to stare. Some whispered. To them, it looked like she was being investigated. To her, it felt like her dignity was being stripped away in public. When the manager arrived, the tension only deepened. He skimmed her documents, frowned, and shook his head ever so slightly, as if he had already decided she couldn't possibly own an account like this. His voice was calm, professional, but beneath it was an undeniable wall of mistrust. We need to verify further. This is unusual. Please wait. Wait. That single word echoed in her chest like an insult. Wait, as if her time, her authority, her identity didn't matter. She sat in the corner, her success, her title, her years of hard work reduced to a silent battle with prejudice in a room filled with strangers. The minutes turned into humiliation. She saw the sideways glances, the skeptical eyes of those around her. To them, she wasn't a leader or a businesswoman. She was just another black woman being checked. Her jaw tightened, but she stayed composed. She knew anger would only feed their assumptions. Then came the moment that pushed everything past the breaking point. The manager returned, papers in hand, his words clipped and cold. We can't release these funds at this time. No explanation, no apology, just a denial, as though her success, her money, her very identity were in question. Her chest burned with rage, but she kept her voice. steady. She had been through storms before, but this one felt different. This wasn't about money. It was about being told she didn't belong in a space she had built her entire life to enter, and what they didn't know, what none of them could have. Imagined was that the woman they were trying to deny was not just a customer. She was the one who signed the paychecks. She was the one who held the keys to the very building they stood in, but she wasn't ready to reveal that. Not yet. The air in the bank had shifted from quiet suspicion to open confrontation. She stood there, her request denied, her identity dismissed, her patience tested. Every eye in the room seemed to pierce through her, not with empathy, but with judgment, like she was the intruder, the fraud, the problem. Her chest tightened, the sting of humiliation burning hotter than any fire she had faced in the boardroom. She had endured battles before, competitors, critics, doubters, but never had her existence, her very right to be seen as legitimate, been stripped so brazenly in public. The manager placed her documents on the counter with a cold finality, his words sharp enough to wound. "We cannot release these funds. We will have to freeze the account for further investigation." The freeze wasn't just on her money. It was on her dignity, her credibility, her humanity. For a moment, silence swallowed her whole. The hum of the bank machines, the shuffle of feet. All of it faded into a deafening roar inside her head. She saw the disbelief on strangers' faces, the smirk on one teller's lips, the pity in another's eyes. And then, with a calmness that shook the room more than anger ever could, she leaned forward. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She simply stated the truth they had been too blind to see. "This isn't just my account. This is my bank." Gasps rippled through the lobby. The whispers stopped. The very air seemed to freeze. The same. Staff who had dismissed her now stared wide-eyed, realizing the magnitude of their mistake. In that instant, the power shifted, not just in the room but in the story itself, and the world would never look at her the same way again. The silence in the bank that day was louder than any outcry. Faces that had once looked at her with suspicion now held shame, confusion, even fear. The manager who had frozen her account stumbled over apologies, the staff suddenly scrambling to undo the damage. But no amount of backtracking could erase what had already been done. The wound wasn't in the paperwork, it was in the way they had stripped her of dignity before recognizing her worth. She walked out of that building with her head high, not because the situation had been resolved, but because she refused to let their prejudice define her. Yet the weight of that moment stayed heavy. For all her success, for all her accomplishments, she realized something devastating. Even ownership couldn't protect her from the shadow of racism. That day wasn't just about her. It was about every black woman, every person of color who has ever been doubted, dismissed, or denied, not because of who they are, but because of how they look. Her story was a mirror, reflecting the uncomfortable truth that racism doesn't disappear with wealth, titles, or power. It lingers in the systems, the assumptions, the everyday interactions where dignity is tested and humanity is questioned. And so, her story forces us to ask ourselves, how many more moments like this will it take before the world changes? Because this wasn't just about a CEO in a bank. This was about all of us. The way we see, the way we judge, the way we choose to act or stay silent. The question isn't whether racism still exists. The question is, what will we do the next time we see it unfold before our eyes?